In the shadowy depths of a world teetering on the edge of chaos, there lived a man named Song. Frail and burdened by the weight of his circumstances, Song was a man of little strength and even less energy. His mother lay in a hospital bed, his younger sister was away at school, and he was the sole breadwinner for his family. Desperate to make ends meet, Song worked for a mysterious organization known as the Adventurers Guild. But his frailty relegated him to the weakest of missions, tasks so trivial that they barely kept him alive. Yet, in this world of danger and uncertainty, even the weakest missions could spiral into chaos. One fateful day, Song was assigned a fourth-rank mission by the Guild. He ventured into a hunter's den, a place teeming with seasoned adventurers who greeted him with a mix of amusement and pity. They knew that if someone as weak as Song was sent on a mission, it must be an easy one. But among them was Juhi, a second-rank healer who harbored deep feelings for Song. She pleaded with him not to go, knowing that every mission he undertook left him battered and broken. Yet Song, driven by the need to provide for his family, ignored her warnings. The team's leader, a man named Sean, rallied the group with a rousing speech before they entered the mission site. Song hesitated at the threshold, his heart pounding with fear, but he steeled himself. "I have to do this," he whispered, clutching his worn-out dagger, the only weapon he could afford. As they ventured deeper into the cavern, the air grew thick with tension. The hunters discussed the recent surge in powerful beings emerging from these caves, beings whose strength far exceeded their own. Song, classified as the weakest hunter in the world, a fifth rank, felt the weight of his inadequacy pressing down on him. Inside the cavern, Song encountered a small beast. With great effort, he managed to defeat it and claim its crystal, a small victory that filled him with fleeting pride. But his triumph was short-lived. Suddenly, two larger beasts ambushed him, their claws slashing through the air. Song fought desperately, his dagger shattering against their hides. Just as one of the beasts lunged for the kill, Juhi's voice echoed through the cavern. She screamed for help, and a nearby hunter intervened, saving Song's life. Juhi rushed to heal him, her voice trembling with anger and fear. "Why do you keep doing this to yourself? You know you're weak. You're going to get yourself killed." Song remained silent, knowing she was right, but unable to stop. Meanwhile, the hunters had defeated the cavern's boss and were preparing to leave when one of them spotted a hidden passage. Against Sean's better judgment, the group decided to explore it, lured by the promise of more crystals and wealth. Song, though terrified, voted to continue, driven by the need to provide for his family. As they ventured deeper, they stumbled upon a massive ancient door. Against all caution, they opened it, revealing a chamber bathed in an eerie blue light. The room was filled with iron knights, their hollow eyes gleaming with malice. Before they could react, a book on one of the statues caught their attention. The first line read, "Those who enter here and fail to abide by the rules of this place will not leave alive." Panic set in as the door slammed shut behind them. Juhi noticed something horrifying. The statue's eyes were following them. One hunter, overcome with fear, tried to flee but was instantly slain by a statue that moved with terrifying speed. The room erupted into chaos as the Iron Knights came to life, their swords cutting through the hunters like paper. Song, paralyzed with fear, felt his instincts screaming at him. Years of surviving near-death encounters had honed his ability to sense danger. "Get down," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. Those who listened survived the initial onslaught, but the room was now a battlefield. The giant statue at the center of the chamber unleashed a devastating attack, killing several hunters in an instant. The survivors, including Song and Sean, were left reeling. As the dust settled, Sean, now missing an arm, turned to Song. "You're our only hope," he said, his voice strained with pain. Song, though terrified, began to focus, searching for a way out. The room was a death trap, but if they could just find an exit, they might survive. The Iron Knights closed in, their movements mechanical and relentless. Song's mind raced as he tried to piece together a plan. The stakes had never been higher, and failure meant certain death. In the end, it was Song's quick thinking and unyielding determination that saved them. He led the survivors through a hidden passage, narrowly escaping the chamber of death. But as they emerged into the light, battered and broken, they knew their ordeal was far from over. The cavern had changed them, and the world outside would never be the same. Song, once the weakest of them all, had proven that even the frailest among us can rise to greatness when faced with the abyss. But the cost of survival was high, and the shadows of that cursed place would haunt them forever. In the dim, suffocating confines of the ancient cavern, the air was thick with dread. The group of adventurers, battered and broken, huddled together as the towering iron statues loomed over them, their hollow eyes gleaming with malice. Among them was one particularly brash hunter, his confidence unshaken despite the carnage around him. He stood up, his voice cutting through the oppressive silence. "I trust my speed," he declared, a reckless grin spreading across his face. "I've survived worse than this. There's no way I'm dying here today." The others tried to reason with him, pleading for him to stay, but he ignored their warnings. With a burst of speed, he darted toward the exit, his movements a blur. But in the blink of an eye, the largest statue moved, its massive arm swinging down like a guillotine. The hunter was obliterated instantly, leaving only his legs behind, as a grim reminder of his hubris. The room fell into a deeper silence, the weight of despair pressing down on the survivors. Hope was slipping away, but Song, the weakest among them, refused to give up. While the others trembled in fear, Song's mind raced. He scanned the room, his eyes landing on the cryptic inscriptions etched into the walls. "Sean," he called out, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Translate this for me. There's a rule here, something about worshipping the devil." Sean, clutching his bleeding arm, nodded and began deciphering the ancient text. The first rule was clear: you must honor the devil. But how? Song's mind churned as he tried to make sense of it. Suddenly, an idea struck him. He stood up, his legs trembling, and faced the towering statue. Its glowing eyes locked onto him, and for a moment, it seemed as though death was inevitable. But just as the statue prepared to strike, Song dropped to his knees, bowing low. The attack halted mid-swing. "It's working!" Song shouted, his voice filled with a mix of relief and urgency. "Everyone, do what I'm doing! Bow to it!" The others hesitated, but with no other options, they followed his lead. The statue's expression shifted, its stone face twisting into a grotesque, mocking grin. A chilling laugh echoed through the chamber, sending shivers down their spines. "Did we do it?" one of the hunters whispered. "Can we escape now?" But their relief was short-lived. The statue suddenly lurched forward, its massive form moving with terrifying speed. Panic erupted as the hunters scrambled to evade its attacks. Song, still on the ground, shouted, "We need to follow the second rule. It says to worship the god. What does that mean?" The group was in chaos, their voices overlapping in fear and confusion. Song tried to explain, his words frantic. "I've been in temples before. I know how this works. Just run. Stay away from it for now." But the statue was relentless. One by one, the hunters fell, their screams echoing through the chamber. Song and Juhi, the healer, found themselves cornered near a statue holding a musical instrument. Song's eyes widened as a realization dawned on him. "The music!" he yelled. "The statues with instruments. They're the key. Run to them and play something." The survivors, desperate and out of options, obeyed. One by one, they reached the musical statues and began to mimic their poses. The room filled with an eerie melody as the statues joined in, their stone hands moving as if alive. But Song and Juhi were still in danger. The massive statue was closing in, its eyes fixed on Song. "Stay here, Juhi," he said, his voice trembling. "I'll find another statue. We can't both be at the same one." He limped away, his severed leg dragging behind him, the pain nearly unbearable. The statue was inches away when Song finally reached another musical statue. He collapsed beside it, the statue's melody drowning out the sound of his labored breathing. The massive statue paused, its attack halted once more. But the respite was brief. The third rule appeared, etched in fiery letters on the ground. Sacrifice. The group froze, the weight of the word sinking in. Kim, one of the hunters, turned to Sean, his voice filled with anger. "This is your fault. You led us here. You need to take responsibility." Sean, his face pale but resolute, nodded. He stepped forward, walking toward the pool of fire that had appeared in the center of the room. The flames roared around him, but he remained unharmed. Song, watching closely, realized their mistake. "It's not about one person sacrificing themselves," he shouted. "We all need to come together." The group gathered in the center, the flames encircling them. The statues began to move again, their stone forms closing in. Song's voice cut through the chaos. "Don't take your eyes off the statues. If you look away, they'll kill us all." But one of the hunters, overwhelmed by fear, broke away and ran for the exit. To everyone's shock, the statues ignored her. She escaped unscathed, but the flames around the group grew fiercer. Realization dawned on Song. "Only one of us needs to stay behind," he said, his voice heavy with resignation. "The rest can leave." Kim, his face twisted with guilt, stepped forward. "I'm sorry," he said. "I have a family waiting for me. I can't stay." He turned and fled, the statues allowing him to pass. Sean, his resolve unshaken, turned to Song. "Take Juhi and go," he said. "I'll stay. This is my responsibility." But Song shook his head. "My leg is gone. I can't carry her. You take her. I'll stay." Sean hesitated, but there was no time to argue. He scooped up Juhi, who was too weak to move, and ran for the exit. Song watched them go, a strange sense of peace washing over him. The statues closed in, their stone faces expressionless. As the flames engulfed him, Song closed his eyes, his final thoughts a mix of regret and relief. He had done what he could. The others would live. And in the end, that was enough. Juhi's eyes burned with anger and sorrow as she glared at Sean, her voice trembling but fierce. "No, I'm not leaving without him. Song has to come with us," she shouted, her fists clenched at her sides. Song, lying on the ground, with his legs severed and his body broken, managed a weak smile. "Juhi, don't worry about me," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Take the crystal I collected from the cavern. Use it to buy yourself something nice. I promise. When I get out of here, I'll take you to dinner." His attempt at humor fell flat, as Juhi's eyes filled with tears. She opened her mouth to argue, but before she could speak, Sean struck her in the neck, knocking her unconscious. He scooped her up and carried her out of the cavern, the massive door slamming shut behind them. Song was alone now, the iron statues closing in around him. He grabbed Kim's discarded weapon, his hands shaking as he tried to defend himself. But it was no use. The statues were too powerful, their movements too precise. One by one, they dismantled him, his arm, his other leg, until he was nothing more than a broken heap on the ground. Blood pooled around him, and his vision blurred. "At least I'm the only one dying here," he thought, his mind drifting. "I fought. I survived so many times. But I guess this is the end." As the final statue loomed over him, ready to deliver the killing blow, a sudden blinding light filled the room. A message appeared before Song's eyes, glowing with an otherworldly intensity. You have unlocked the skill, Courage of the Weak. Your heart will stop in 2 seconds unless you accept. Do you agree to become a player? Yes or no? Song, barely conscious, had no idea what was happening. But with his last ounce of strength, he whispered, yes. The world went dark. When Song opened his eyes, he was lying in a hospital bed, the sterile smell of antiseptic filling his nostrils. He blinked, disoriented, and looked down at his body. His arm and leg, which had been severed in the cavern, were intact. He touched them, half convinced it was all a dream. But the memories were too vivid, too real. Before he could process what had happened, 2 elite hunters from the guild entered his room. Their expressions were grim, but curious. You're the 6th survivor of the Rank 4 Cavern Massacre, one of them said, his voice low. Can you tell us what happened in there? Song recounted the events, his voice steady despite the lingering fear. The hunters exchanged glances, clearly skeptical. When we found you, there were no statues, no monsters. Just you, unconscious. If it weren't for the fact that all the survivors' stories matched, we'd have thought you were lying. Song's mind raced. What does this mean? He asked, his voice trembling. The hunter leaned in, his tone serious. In rare cases, a hunter's latent power awakens. It's possible you've undergone an evolution, a shift from a rank 5 hunter to something far greater, maybe even rank 1 or rank 0. Song's eyes widened. How do I know if my power has increased? The hunter pulled out a small device. This measures energy levels. Place your hand on it. Song did as he was told, but the device showed no change. The hunters exchanged another glance, their skepticism returning. Looks like your energy is the same. Maybe we were wrong. They left without another word, leaving Song alone with his thoughts. But as soon as they were gone, a new message appeared before his eyes. Congratulations. You have become a player. Song stared at it, his heart pounding. What did it mean? Was he hallucinating? His sister entered the room, her face lighting up with relief. You're awake. I was so worried, she said, hugging him tightly. Song hesitated, then asked, Do you see anything strange? Like a message floating in the air? She frowned, confused. No. Are you feeling okay? Maybe you hit your head too hard. Song forced a smile. Never mind. I'm just tired. After she left, Song began experimenting with the messages. They seemed to respond to his thoughts, displaying daily tasks he needed to complete. Running, push-ups, and other exercises. At the bottom of the list was a warning. Failure to complete tasks will result in transfer to the punishment zone. Song scoffed. Punishment zone? Yeah, right. I just woke up from a nightmare. I'm not doing anything. But as the day ended, and he drifted off to sleep, Song found himself suddenly transported to a dark, eerie landscape. Monsters emerged from the shadows, their eyes glowing with malice. A new message appeared. You have been transferred to the punishment zone for failing to complete your daily tasks. Survive for 4 hours, or die. Panic surged through Song as he ran, his body still weak from his injuries. The monsters closed in, their claws inches from his back. Just as one was about to strike, the 4 hours ended, and Song was back in his hospital bed, drenched in sweat. The nurses rushed in, alarmed by his condition. Song, now fully aware of the stakes, began taking the tasks seriously. Every morning, he completed his exercises, his strength and stamina increasing with each passing day. He even discovered rewards for completing tasks on time, replenished energy, increased strength, and a random loot box at the end of each day. One day, he opened it to find a key to a rank 4 cavern. Song hesitated, the memories of his near-death experience still fresh. But he knew he couldn't stay in the hospital forever. With a deep breath, he decided to explore the new cavern, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. Whatever lay ahead, he was ready to face it. He had become a player, and the game was just beginning. This was the first part of the first season in our anime. Today, we will see you later. Peace.